You know, there's a really funny aspect about this trade idea. And that aspect is the fact that this conversation isn't something that's particularly unique. I don't think anybody is going to be looking at this video and saying, oh yeah, wow, I'd never heard about that or never thought about that until now. Lego, thanks for enlightening me. No, I'm pretty sure most Canucks fans, especially the ones who have been diehard and kind of listening to all of the noise, going over some of the names, talking about trade ideas, etc., I'm pretty sure most Canucks fans who are tuned in to all the stuff that the media has been spewing out have heard or at least thought about this idea at some point over the past 2 weeks. I know I certainly have, and it is one of these ideas that if you search about it on Twitter, you'll see a lot of people actually going out there and bringing it up in separate instances. Today, we are talking about the Vancouver Canucks' second most paid forward, JT Miller, and the idea of him getting traded over to New York for somebody. We'll get into that a little bit later. But part of the reason JT is in the trade rumor mill is because of the fact that he is not really playing all too well. That's it. Straight up. Miller has low-key gotten back to the lazy Miller days that we have seen back from 2022-2023. Remember those days where everybody was dogging on him because he got this new contract extension and he was playing like crap and he wasn't back-checking and he wasn't playing well defensively and he was lazy and he was this and he was that and he was angry? We're kind of seeing that bring itself back up here. And with the reported rift between JT Miller and Elias Pettersson, and as well as the fact that JT and his arrival has prompted the ever so unfortunate decline in point production out of Petey, it's kind of funny how Petey stopped producing once JT returned to the team. Now, more than ever before, we are seeing Canucks fans talking about the idea of trading Miller over to a team that apparently does have very much high interest in him. The New York Rangers. We already spoke about this a few weeks ago, that when Miller took his initial leave of absence a month ago, New York was one of the teams that called in and said, hey, is this guy available? To which Patrick Allvin most likely responded, no, sorry, he's not, and then quickly hung up the phone. Now, though, with all the ideas of Miller potentially being sent out or whatever, depending on what happens with this Elias Pettersson drama, you have yourselves another revisited idea as to whether or not the Rangers could actually give Vancouver something that they want. And it's a funny idea, mostly because of the names, and of course it's something that you definitely saw in the title and the thumbnail of this video, so there's no use in really trying to be suspenseful about it. Today we're talking about the idea of trading Miller for Miller. Could we see JT get sent over to New York for some sort of a move involving Andre Miller? Now, to open up the conversation, we're going to go on to this article published by Dave Pottinger on The Province from earlier 3 days ago. Canucks this week, the hockey world set alight by rumors of Elias Pettersson and JT Miller rift. The reason this article is great is because of the Andre Miller talk towards the middle bottom part of the article. It goes over some of the trade ideas here, options on the table, without ferocity of a Miller-Pettersson trade fulcrum. Insiders everywhere are suggesting trades for the Canucks. Here, the Hockey News goes in on a few of them. Now, full disclaimer, this article actually goes out there and opens up with some Saravalli comments saying that Miller and Petey are probably not going to get traded, but with Elliot Friedman's hit a few days ago on Saturday Headlines, talking about how the Canucks haven't necessarily said anything about a timeline, but if this does continue, if this rift or whatever you want to call it, if it does continue to hold the team back, something will have to give at some point. What that says to me is that Miller and Petey, neither of them are untradeable, quote unquote. Somebody could find themselves on the market depending on what happens over the next few weeks or months here. But if you go back over onto the article as to potential names the Canucks could target, let's go out there and read the middle part of the piece. ESPN's Rachel Dory, once a Canucks employee, has some trade thoughts with the Canucks, and not just with Pettersson. It's no secret that the Canucks are looking for a young puck-moving D-man. Outside of Quinn Hughes, the Canucks struggle in transition. They struggle to defend the rush, and in moving the puck up ice from the back end. The Vancouver Canucks have been interested in Bowen Byram dating back a few seasons, and it isn't a secret that something has to give in Buffalo. Byram has taken a step forward with the Sabres, playing top 4 minutes and filling in on the power play in Rasmus Dahlin's absence. He would be a good option for the Canucks' second power play unit. Andre Miller's name has been floating around recently, and he is another player in whom the Canucks would have interest. Rick Tocchet likes big defensemen, and the Canucks have their own forest with all the trees on the back end. Miller would be 25 in January, and the 6'5" blue liner is a pending RFA with arb rights. Now here's the thing. Because K'Andre Miller is a target, apparently, in New York, and because New York has already gone out there and asked about JT Miller, if you search Miller for Miller on social media, it's not actually too unique of a thought. There are a lot of people who have suggested this Miller for Miller pseudo-quasi kind of funny trade idea thing that's partly serious because of the assets involved, but also partly joking because the names happen to be the same. Ultimately, it is an idea that if you did it 1-for-1, I think the Rangers would be winning by quite a long shot. K'Andre Miller is a good player, but man, is he not worth the 100-point center that JT Miller was last year, even if JT is having a pretty dog-crap year this year. K'Andre just is not fully polished enough, and he doesn't bring enough to the table to fully justify the value of a 100-point scorer. Miller is 24 years old, he's a big dude, so he's still young and he's got a lot of growth to exhibit, and he's a guy who last season had a pretty good year. 30 points, 80 games played. The season before that he had 43 points and 79. This year, though, he's injured. He has himself 6 points in 28 games, and he's on pace for 17 in 77. That's really not great, and unfortunately for K'Andre, things have kind of fallen out of favor for him the past little while here in New York. Not necessarily in terms of the minutes. He's still getting opportunities. He's getting, let's say, some 20, 21, even 23-minute games in there. But ultimately, I think a lot of Rangers fans have been somewhat disappointed with the way K'Andre has played this season, which in a way maybe brings this trade idea to a little bit more of a reasonable level, right? JT Miller has been struggling this year. K'Andre has been struggling this year too. That doesn't mean that they're equally valued the same way, 1-for-1, but it just means that there is a reasonable idea to make some sort of a conversation like this happen. I actually had a conversation with a buddy of mine on the PlayStation a few nights ago saying, hey, this entire Miller for Miller thing is sort of a picking up steam thought. Is it worth it to do it 1-for-1? And I was like, no, probably not 1-for-1. And my buddy tossed out another idea. He was like, okay, what about Miller for Miller and Gabe Perreault, for example, another prospect in the Rangers organization. And that was one of the ideas that I bounced upon, and I was like, hey, I actually really like that. Gabe Perreault is a very solid scorer in the NCAA, a Rangers top guy, a prospect taken by them in the 23rd spot in 2023. He's over a point per game this season. He was way over a point per game last season as a freshman, was also dominant at the World Juniors for Team USA. Gabe Perreault is one of these forward prospects that if he becomes a player that is similar to a playmaking, let's just say efficiency rating like JT Miller has gotten over the past little while, you're really happy with that. It's just, of course, Gabe Perreault is a little bit younger, and you would be relinquishing quite a bit of value to your team in the present for what Perreault would be bringing into the future and what K'Andre has right now and into the future as well. The Canucks are in need of a defenseman. K'Andre Miller can help, especially if you believe that he's got a lot more to show for from this season, because he literally did more the past 2 years. But if you wanted to trade away JT Miller for that, obviously you are getting rid of some very heavy value. But devil's advocate point of view, what value is Miller bringing to the Vancouver Canucks right now anyway? Not much. In theory, he should be giving more. And that's, I think, the biggest reason why some sort of a JT Miller trade would be so difficult to accomplish, is because for Vancouver, there's always that question of what if? What if Miller just finds himself a way to get things back into gear tomorrow? What if today's game against the San Jose Sharks is the turning point? What if Miller gets 4 points, PD gets, let's just say, 3, and everything looks good because there are multiple power play goals that are scored? What if everything goes right? But what if everything continues to go badly? What if the Canucks get themselves another shorthanded goal scored against because Miller doesn't take his guy? What if the Canucks go into overtime again against the San Jose Sharks, and it's Mikael Granlund who loses his center, and ultimately it's JT Miller's responsibility and he loses it once more? What happens if JT keeps on playing poorly and the Vancouver Canucks are forced to think about Miller not because he was a 100-point scorer last year, but because he's a guy who brings so much negative value to the team in the forward core at $8 million a year? There are a lot of factors that you have to evaluate when you think about some sort of a trade for assets that will be helpful in the future, like Gabe Perreault and K'Andre Miller, when compared to what the value of JT Miller is supposed to be right now. So ultimately, this idea is kind of wild, and I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. What are your thoughts about a Miller for Miller trade? And do you think a guy like Gabe Perreault, for example, is a prospect that makes it even? Let me know in the comment section below. What do you think? I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.